Okay, so we'll start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
So we decided to do our project on the opioid epidemic, and as you guys know, the opioids are any drugs that are classified as painkillers like oxycodone, or heroin, cocaine, fentanyl, carfentanil. So every day in the United States, more than 650,000 opioid prescriptions are dispensed by doctors. That means that 3,900 people begin non-medical use of prescription opioids per day, and that means 91 people die per day of opioid-related use.
So our research question was, did doctors cause this opioid epidemic that is now engulfed the United States? And so to add insight into what caused this deadly crisis, we wanted to re-examine the three waves of the opioid crisis. The first wave being evolution, it started in 1991, lasted until 2000. Early misconceptions about opioids, how they were non-addictive, led to pharmaceutical companies using this to pressure doctors and hospitals to prescribe more and more opioids to their patients. This only increased as time went on, and in 1995, OxyContin was approved by the FDA, and at first it was believed that it would be less likely to be abused, but unfortunately that was not true. Next, as we progress into the late stages of the wave, there is a greater push for better pain treatment by societies like the American Pain Society and the Joint Commission through their Pain is a Fifth Vital Sign campaign. And this final push leads us into our next wave, which was the manufacturing and distribution wave, which lasted from 2000 to 2010. Now, manufacturing grew because of this push from the Pain is a Fifth Vital Sign campaign, and also from pharmaceutical companies wanting to sell their drugs. Now, we see this early uptick in opioid abuse from 2000 to 2002. There was a high increase in morphine prescriptions, 40.4 milligrams in 2000 and 46.6 milligrams in 2002. But there was no reason why it should have increased, no prolonged stay, no nausea, no vomiting that would induce this raised prescription. We also see an increase of non-medical use of OxyContin. In 1999, 400,000 people were using. In 2002, 1.9 million people were using. And in 2003, 2.8 million were using. This, of course, triggered an FDA warning letter to Purdue Pharma, the producers of OxyContin. And in 2003, they wanted them to change their labels because they were misleading patients about the abuse risks of OxyContin. But they didn't change this until 2007 when they were sued. Now, by this time, opioids were everywhere and many people were addicted. And this leads us into our next wave, the epidemic. It lasted from 2010 and is still going on today. With distribution high, everyone in the United States, opioids were everywhere. The American Society of Interventional Pain Physicians in 2010 released guidelines outlining what physicians should do to try to curb this epidemic. They believed if they informed the public, lowered costs of non-opioid usage, pain treatment, and switched drugs to make them less abusive, it would help. Unfortunately, it didn't. We saw a high spike in 2013 with synthetic opioids like fentanyl or tramadol, and this constant rise continues until present day. During this time, the FDA issued many warnings, regulations, more guidelines towards physicians, but none of it worked. And in 2017, the United States government declared the opioid epidemic a public health emergency.
So as you can see here, the opioid epidemic has gravely impacted the economy. Especially from 2003 to 2017, the amount of money being spent in billions of dollars dealing with the opioid epidemic has continually increased, and between 2014 and 2015, you can see a large jump. This money is being spent on things such as increased healthcare, criminal justice involvement, and addiction treatment. So as the economy continues to pay billions of dollars, as in 2017 they paid about $4.3 billion, large pharmaceutical companies are profiting off. So this is just a breakdown of like the economic impact of opioids. So about $55 million a year is being spent in health and social costs, and about $20 million a year is being spent in emergency department and inpatient care. So this is broken down by pharmaceutical companies. So this is about the amount of money that they've made. And one company in particular, Purdue Pharma, in January of 2003, experienced a scandal because they had intentionally left out information about the addictiveness of OxyContin, which led to doctors unknowingly continuing prescribing OxyContin, which led to increased addiction rates and death rates. And so then they were sent a warning letter in January of 2003, and eventually in 2007, they announced that they had intentionally left out information, which left them being sued $635 million. But at this point, that was basically pocket cash for them because they had made about $9.57 billion off opioid painkillers, along with $1 billion off drugs to treat addiction, treat overdose, and treat side effects.
All right, so within the next 10 years, I have the futuristic funds, as you guys can tell. So this data was taken in 2015, and you can see that in the next decade, 2025, it is hypothesized that the death rate will reach 93,000 deaths a year. So that also means that 250 people will die a day, which means that more Americans in the next decade will die from the opioid epidemic than have died since the HIV/AIDS epidemic since the 1980s. That also means that if we do hit the number of 93,000, that the opioid epidemic will take more lives than the worst year of gun violence to date. So another common problem is that many mothers in rural communities like Missouri and St. Louis have been using and abusing opioids while they're pregnant. So that leads to their babies being born with NAS, which is neonatal abstinence syndrome, and that's withdrawal of opioids after they are born. So as you can see, from 2006, we only have less than 100 babies being born per year with NAS. But by 2016, you can say that there is a 538% increase in these cases. And this is happening everywhere. So out of 1,000 live births in West Virginia, 51 to 100 babies are born addicted to an opioid. That also means that every hour in the US, a baby is born addicted to an opioid. So just to go back to our research question about doctors and if they did cause the opioid epidemic, we want to know how is the medical field going to combat this epidemic. So what's been going on recently is that 120 medical schools across the country have implemented classes that students can take about opioids. So these classes include acting out, situations where a patient is asking for an opioid and they're not allowed to give one, and also classes about pain management and how to deal with opioids.
Okay, so our conclusion is that although doctors were a huge part of the opioid epidemic, it wasn't solely their fault. Pharmaceutical companies had a major presence in prescribing, and in this picture you can see the pharmaceutical company, the doctor, the patient. The pharmaceutical company is putting money into the doctor's pockets. Doctors actually got a ton of raises and promotions if they prescribe more opioids.
Yes, so in the future, we definitely think that doctors are going to cut back on the amount of opioids that they are prescribing, and it will become more of the pharmaceutical companies that are at fault.
Yes, and if the amount of opioids being distributed is lowered, the economy can eventually start to regain some of the billions of dollars that it lost. But pharmaceutical companies, no matter what, will continue to profit off of these medications because they're the ones that prescribe the opioids, but they also are the ones that prescribe the medication to treat opioids, proving that they profit off people's pain.
All right, Nicole, how did the group decide to include Laura's perspectives into the overall presentation?
Well, we thought if we started off with the opioid epidemic and didn't have the historic lens like Laura had, it wouldn't have made any sense because a lot of us were only 17. We weren't around when the opioid epidemic started in the 90s, so we don't have that basis of information. So we felt it was very wealthy to our presentation to include that so everybody could have a basic knowledge.
All right. Grace, how did the content of the presentation change as you worked through the process?
So I was originally going to do economic and artistic, but then we kind of had a group discussion and we decided to take out the artistic part because the economic is so greatly impactful and just like focus strictly on that.
Okay, all right. Laura, which of the three of yours work had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that you worked with?
Well, not to be, I don't know, biased, but I mean, personally, I think my own topic, I thought it covered a range of what happened before and what's happening now. But of course, Nicole's was very influential as well. She talked about the future, which is extremely important now because, I mean, the opioid epidemic is a public health emergency, and we need to figure out how we're going to treat that in the future. And Grace's, of course, gives us the economic perspective, how it's affecting our country. So, I mean, all of them were important, but mine did give a lot of background, which I thought was necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, another round of applause.